made extra special by their appearance, as well as a composer who came all the way from Taiwan to be here with us. I know. So we'll get into that in a minute. I just want to tell you a little bit about the other pieces on the program. The program starts, you know how sometimes I like to start our masterpiece programs with a very exciting overture, something fast and loud. This one has a very different approach. We're going to start with something very beautiful and almost meditative. It's the Adoration by Florence Price. And that name, of course, is probably familiar to you now. We've played a number of pieces of hers over the last few years. Florence Price, of course, distinguished herself in the 1930s as the first Black American to have a Black American woman to have a symphony performed by a major orchestra. The Chicago Symphony performed her first symphony. But during her lifetime, she did struggle to have her music performed and published on a grand scale. She wrote so many pieces for piano, organ. She was a wonderful pianist and organist herself, and a deeply religious and spiritual person. She also wrote symphonies and concertos, violin concertos, piano concertos. And so it's exciting that in 2009, a treasure trove of her lost and unknown manuscripts were discovered in a house outside of Chicago. That was her summer home. People living there now were redoing things, and they came across this huge pile of music manuscripts. And it was all this music of Florence Price that was never published and was lost, would have been lost, had it not been discovered. So now orchestras and musicians all over are performing her music more and more. This piece, Adoration, was written near the end of her life in 1951. She lived from 1887 to 1953. In 1951, she wrote this piece for organ solo. And it's like I said, a very beautiful, almost meditative prayer reflecting her deep spirituality. We will perform it in a beautiful arrangement for strings, and the lushness of the strings adds a warmth to it that is just extra special. I was prepared to play a little bit of it for you, maybe in the original organ version, so you could hear a little of that. Test, test. All right, we were working here. Thank you all for everything you're doing to make this work. Can you hear this?
A little bit.
Maybe if you could boost my volume.
Check.
Test, test, test. All right, that may not be loud enough for you to hear it, but it's a gorgeous little, 3.5 minute piece. Excuse me. After the Price Adoration, we will welcome a few more instruments on stage because, as I said, the Price is just for strings. And we will perform Schubert's Fifth Symphony. This is a piece that is not performed as often as it should be. It's a gorgeous, beautiful piece by a young Franz Schubert. Now, Schubert, of course, was known for writing so many German songs, his Lieder. He was an incredible melodist, and he was, not quite a contemporary of Beethoven, but he lived in Vienna at the time that Beethoven was in his heyday. What's interesting about this symphony, and it's a beautiful, wonderful symphony, is that it shows a path that's different than Beethoven's. It's as if he was trying to not be influenced by the advances that Beethoven had made with music and symphonies in those years. So this was written in 1816 in Vienna, and Schubert was only 19 years old. He was working full-time as an elementary school teacher, basically, at his dad's school, reluctantly, because he loved music. He had studied at a music high school with Antonio Salieri, and he continued to study with Salieri, famous Amadeus fame, after high school, and he applied for some music positions, and he didn't get them. So he went to work just teaching elementary school basics, not even music, to kids full-time. But yet in these years, when he was 18 and 19 years old, teaching in this elementary school, he had some of the most prolific years of his life in terms of writing music. He wrote something like, 400 pieces in those 2 years. It's incredible, including this Fifth Symphony. Now, tomorrow would be Mozart's 264th birthday, right? Tomorrow's Mozart's birthday. We don't have Mozart on this program, but what we have is this Schubert symphony, which is an homage to Mozart. In so many ways, this piece was inspired by Mozart. In fact, in Schubert's journals at the time that he wrote this, he was saying, he was waxing poetic about how he was geeking out about Mozart. He was so into Mozart at the time. He was like, I should find you these quotes. It's just amazing. But in his journal, he was talking about how much, Mozart is a gift to the world and such a blessing, and we could never do better than Mozart. And it's so interesting because, like I said, Beethoven was all the rage at the time. Beethoven had already written his first 8 symphonies at the time that this 5th symphony was written by Schubert and kind of went in a totally different direction. So Mozart, one of his greatest symphonies is his G minor symphony number 40. It has a very unusual instrumentation scored for a very small group of instruments. And Mozart scholars don't know why it had that particular scoring. They think it must have had to do with a particular performance, but there was no known public performance of this piece, or even private. But what's interesting is that Schubert's 5th Symphony has that exact same strangely intimate scoring. 1 flute instead of 2. The 2 oboes and 2 bassoons, which are normal. No clarinets, which is very unusual. I mean, even Schubert's 1st Symphony had 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, horns, trumpets, trombones, timpani. This piece, and strings, this piece is just 1 flute and no clarinets, 2 horns, no trumpets, no timpani. No timpani is very unusual. And so, yeah, it has an intimate quality, and it's as if he was saying, I love Mozart's G minor symphony so much, I'm going to write a symphony that has the same instrumentation. And he even uses some kind of a theme that sounds almost similar to it in the minuet. In a major keyed symphony like this, a symphony in B flat major, how rare is it to have a 3rd movement in the minor key? That's extremely rare. And what minor key does he choose? The same exact as Mozart's G minor. So if you were to hear Mozart's G minor minuet, it's bum, 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 bum. And this one is well, here, I'll play it for you. Hold on 1 second. See if we can get you to hear this. A little bit of Schubert here this afternoon. Very similar. And then the other thing that's so wonderful about this symphony is that it has the freshness of youth. I mean, he was 19 when he wrote it, and what's also amazing is that it really is a masterpiece. He experiments with some different things in this, not just in the ways that he was paying tribute to Mozart, but he has some things that, for the musicians out there, like in the first movement, he has a recapitulation in the wrong key. He was just experimenting with new paths harmonically. Throughout all of the movements of this, there are some interesting things that happen harmonically. He uses harmonic sort of detours to strange remote keys as a way to heighten the expression in each of the movements. It's really, even if you're not a musician, you will feel and understand these changes of harmony. But it starts so beautifully and so sort of almost like carefree and feeling of youth. Listen to the opening of the symphony. So gorgeous. I fell in love with this when I first heard it and conducted it when I was still in college. And unfortunately, I've only conducted it once in the 35 years since the first time I conducted it. This is only my 3rd time conducting it. It's just one of those things that we don't get to program as often as we should. I love it dearly, and the musicians love it. It has an amazing slow movement. I could go on and on about it, but we have such wonderful guests. I want to go right into the rest of the program and welcome the members of the Heartland Marimba Quartet and our wonderful composer, Kevin Romanski. Please welcome them all to the stage. So I'll introduce you one by one. We do want to know a little bit about all your backgrounds and everything like that, and also the music that you're performing. So we have Matthew Coley. He is the founder, basically, of Heartland Marimba, which was a festival, and now it's also, well, it's a lot more than that. We'll learn about that in a minute. Kevin Romanski is our composer, who flew all the way from Taiwan to be here for these performances, and it's his first time ever in Wyoming. So special welcome to you. Have any of the rest of you, is it also your first time in Wyoming? Marco? Oh, and Ryan. Okay, we have Ryan Pearson, Marco Shiripa, and Lynn Vartan. Please welcome them all. So, gosh, it's so special to have marimba as a solo instrument in front of an orchestra. More and more these days, marimba solos or concertos are being performed all over the world. However, it's very unusual to have a marimba quartet with orchestra. So maybe we can start with the origins of the Heartland Marimba Quartet, your mission, and how it helped to inspire and create the piece that we're going to perform by Kevin.
Well, thank you all for having us today, and thank you to William for hosting HMQ.
Here, why don't you try this one?
Yeah, maybe. So Heartland Marimba, I started in 2014, as William said, as a festival during the summer, and that's pretty common for a lot of classical music training. In your specific instrument, you'll find your summer festival that you might want to attend and spend a nice bit of time really investing solely in practicing your instrument and learning more. So that's how we started. The marimba art form is very, very young compared to other instruments in the orchestra by centuries in some cases. In the classical marimba art form, the marimba does go back more than 2,000 years to Africa and Asia, but in terms of the concert stage, it's maybe only 100 years old. And really, mostly, it's the last 80 years that it's been happening. But so that's our mission is to elevate the art form and create more opportunities for artists, composers, students, and even communities to get to experience this amazing instrument and the sounds that the artist can create. So that's what I set out to do 10 years ago now, in March, would be officially 10 years ago. And HMQ came along in 2016. We added that as a branch of the organization, and also as kind of the premier front of the organization. So the quartet is the most active portion of the Heartland Marimba organization. We also publish music, and we have a roster of other artists, of about 6 other artists that constitute the HM ensemble. And we've hosted a variety of festivals and workshops over the years.
And numerous commissions.
And yeah, we commission music, which you'll hear, well, Kevin's piece is one of those, is a fruit of that labor. And then maybe a little bit later we can play another one for you here with all 4 of us on one instrument.
Wonderful. That's a great introduction to Heartland Marimba and HMQ. Tell us a little bit about each of yourselves personally. We're just going to go down the line. Tell us like where you're from, how you got started in music, where you're living now.
Okay. I'm originally from Virginia, Southwest Virginia, and ended up after all of my schooling in Chicago, running around doing the freelancing life as a percussionist and collaborator and new music artist and all that. Got a job at Iowa State University and lived in Iowa for about 13 years, but now I live in Pennsylvania, and I'm the executive director of the Center for Mallet Percussion Research at Kutztown University. So it's a one-of-a-kind facility, a museum and concert space that just opened less than a year ago.
Fascinating. Matthew Coley. Kevin Romanski, where are you from originally?
I was born in Albany, New York, And I grew up in a suburb of Albany. And I went to college at Syracuse University, so I was still in New York. And then after graduating, I was in a band, rock band, for 2, 3, 4 years or so. And we ended up living, this band ended up living in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which was like a mile down the road from Rutgers University. And at one point, the pianist of the band wanted to go back to school, wanted to go back to Rutgers for a master's in something like theory or something. And I said, oh yeah, okay, if you go, I'll go with you. I'll go do a master's. He didn't get in, it was his idea. He didn't get, I got in. And then the band broke up. So I remained in New Jersey by myself at Rutgers. And then I stayed there for my doctorate because they knew me. And there I met my wife. She's Taiwanese, and we met on the first day of the doctorate forum class. And then we got married in 2005, and then 2006 in the summer, we went on vacation to visit her parents in Taiwan, and we accepted positions there. We went to a job interview, just like off the cuff, and got the jobs, and so I had to quickly move there and start teaching in September of 2006. I've been there ever since, 17 years.
Teaching music, right?
Yeah, it's I have Broadway shows, pop music ensemble, theory, sight singing, but also I do like costume design, acting in Chinese. That's the worst for me. Translating Chinese into English, English into Chinese. I only translate one way. I can't go the other way. It has to be from English to Chinese, not Chinese into English. Yeah.
Can you give us a little sample of your Chinese?
Okay. Anybody here speak Chinese at all? 如果早晨你对我不是真理 I don't know what that means. It's from song lyrics. 我是 Kevin 老师，我来自台湾，我教课在树德科技大学，挺好。17年不在那。
Thank you, Kevin. Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan Pearson. I am from Des Moines, Iowa, which is where I grew up, and I went to Iowa State University, and that is actually where I met Matthew. Matthew was my first teacher during my undergrad. So he taught me for 4 years at Iowa State, and then I went on and continued my degrees in percussion at Illinois and Kansas. I graduated 3 years ago now with my doctorate and got a job in Hays, Kansas, which is right in the middle of Kansas. You guys know where that is. So I teach at Fort Hays State University, where I am the percussion professor and the one of the band directors there as well. So I conduct some symphonic band. I direct the marching band for the Fort Hays State University Tigers. So I actually joined Heartland. It was like only 3-4 years ago now. So
You mean when you joined the quartet?
Oh, that was actually the first time I joined the ensemble.
I see.
And this is actually my second performance with the quartet.
Fascinating. Well, what's so great is that you're probably one of the people who have been affected by Heartland Marimba overall for the longest in your life. I mean, I guess ever since your undergrad.
Yeah, I was there at Iowa State when Matthew started Heartland Marimba, so I was there for that first summer festival, and then we finally reconnected after I went on my other degrees. And once I graduated, it was like, yeah, let's get back into it, and started performing with Heartland.
That's great.
Poster child.
Yeah, poster child of what Heartland Marimba was meant for, right? Marco Shiripa, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi everyone, I'm Marco Shiripa. I'm originally from Syracuse, New York. Not to date anyone, but I didn't know Kevin. It was different times. I ended up going to school and studying music theory and percussion at Ithaca College in Southern New York. And then from there worked on my graduate degrees at Indiana. And currently, I'm the assistant professor and director of percussion studies at Central Michigan University in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. I've lived a whole lot of different places over the past 10 years or so. But in addition to that, of course, I perform a lot. I'm a composer. I write a lot of music that's inspired by video game and electronic music. And if you're at our concert on Sunday, you'll hear one of those pieces, along with one of Matthew's original pieces. We kind of have some similar inspirations. And I recently released an album. It's called Digital Dances. It's available everywhere you find music. And you can hear the Heartland Marimba Quartet playing on it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's basically what it is now. I became involved with Heartland Marimba around 2021, and I kind of came in to fill in for a concert, and it led to me filling in for all the concerts permanently. So now I'm here, and I'm so glad to be playing for you and speaking.
Thank you. And Lynn Vartan.
Hi everyone, my name is Lynn Vartan, and I'm the Western representation here. I'm from California, and from Central California, and I went to a School of the Arts there, and then the day I graduated high school, I moved to LA. I wanted to be an LA girl, and so I did all my schooling in Los Angeles. My graduate degrees are from the University of Southern California. And I currently live in Utah, and I'm the director of percussion and world music at Southern Utah University, and I've been there for 15 years. This is going on my 16th year there, which is really exciting. That's in Cedar City, Utah. I split my time teaching and also performing as a soloist quite a bit internationally. And one of the areas that I like to get involved with quite a bit is collaboration with dance and film, and also electronics. Many times when I play as a soloist, I'm working with electronic music. So Matthew and I have known each other for years and years and have played together in duos, and we've hosted each other many times for residencies and performances. So he's one of my longtime friends, and I'm just so inspired by what you've done with the group, so it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you all so much. As you can see, they're based at different places all over the country. So the natural question is, how do you get together and perform as a quartet? And they perform all the time. I mean, they do tours a couple times a year. Yeah, and I mean, you're coming up on how many performances Heartland Marimba has done in the last few years, like 200 or something?
It's over 200.
Over 200. Including performances in Germany, lots of competitions and conventions and festivals. Tell us about the process of how you get together to perform if you're based in different areas.
Yeah, so I'll talk maybe a little bit about the initial planning that I do, and then maybe Marco, you can talk a little bit about some of the process once we get together. But as William said, we try to perform as much as possible. Life takes its turns and switches back and all that stuff, and so things do change and become more challenging as our other jobs and locations change, but we navigate that by meeting regularly online and keeping a very robust Google Drive space full of itineraries and planning documents and programs, and we have a library that's 250 pieces deep in that Google space, and so that's where everything administratively is housed. And then I through our connections as percussionists, the world is pretty small in terms of our field, so we draw on our networks to kind of work on building tours. And so usually I'll try to find what we call an anchor gig, and then that'll take us to a region of the country or maybe overseas. And then we try to schedule smaller events around that, master classes at colleges, other concerts at assisted living communities, things like that, just to kind of fill out a week or 2 weeks of touring.
Do you want to tell them what you're doing in there?
Yes, so right after this event, we will drive to the University of Wyoming Laramie to perform a master class / concert presentation. And so we're borrowing a couple of marimbas from their school. So this is giving back to them. We're going out there to work with and to present for their students and talk with the students about career development and entrepreneurial topics. So that's essential to our mission. Our mission is the education and the outreach to what we do. So I'll pass it to Marco, and he can talk about the process once we have a tour scheduled, and then how we make it all work from there.
Yeah, and going off of what Matthew mentioned with having, the connections in our small percussion world, a question that we've gotten a lot since we've been here in Wyoming is how we got our marimbas here. And in short, we didn't. We had to draw on our connections and those around us to borrow and rent. So we got these 4 beautiful 5-octave marimbas from 3 different places to be able to have here for the performance, because bringing our trailer from Philadelphia wasn't really going to work super well. But then when you put on top of that, at the University of Wyoming, they're so graciously allowing us to use 2 of their instruments. And their percussion professor there, Andy, went to school with Ryan and also is an alumnus of Central Michigan University. I wasn't his teacher, but he came from there, and so we both had a connection just in Laramie, Wyoming, where we've headed for the first time recently. But anyway, as far as our rehearsal process goes, we do have a lot of meetings on Zoom. Some of them are very long, where we're planning out everything from how we're going to rehearse to the itineraries to marketing and design, social media, all of the parts of the organization. Everything that Heartland Marimba does is done by those of us that are involved, from social media to running the publishing division, I guess you would call it. But when we're getting together, even if it's just we're going to fly in and rehearse for 3 days in the summer, we do what we call rehearsal retreats. They're very long sets of days where we just rehearse. It's almost like band camp when you're in high school. But we know what we're doing for every minute of every day when we're all there together, because it's there for business. We're not there to hang out. We're there to play music, get it where it needs to be, because that's our last chance before the next time. So we'll have meetings to discuss repertoire for all the upcoming concerts. The concert that you'll hear on Sunday is a specific program that we decided for that concert. In about a month, we have a concert in Indianapolis that's a completely different program. I think 2 of the pieces might be the same, and it's based on, many factors that go into scheduling that next concert. And so we'll show up for rehearsal, and we'll know what we're rehearsing this day. We'll put it together. And of course, the onus is on all the performers to really be ready. And, there's being ready, and then there's being ready. The second one is what we really need to do when we get together. But we're all professionals. We do this for a living, and it is stressful at times, but it allows us to have a professional marimba quartet, which is a pretty hard thing to do in most circumstances.
Has there ever been a professional marimba quartet before this? I mean, in this sense, like in a classical world.
Yes, the Manhattan Marimba Quartet, I just slipped out of it.
Mobius or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the Manhattan was active in the 70s, and they left a legacy with the music they commissioned and some recordings. And then in Europe, there's the Wave Quartet. I'm not sure of how long they've been around. I don't think it's longer than Heartland, but they're also not regularly active as Heartland is. We are the only regularly active professional classical marimba quartet.
Right.
And of course, there's the Nandayapa marimba group, which is more of a traditional, out of Mexico, right? Yeah, they're more of a traditional marimba ensemble.
I see.
Yeah.
More folk.
Yeah, Central American music,
I see.
primarily.
Could you give us just a very brief summation about a little bit of the history of the marimba and the waves that it has had of popularity, like in the 1920s, 1960s, 70s, and now?
Yes, so the marimba, as I said, goes back more than 2,000 years to Africa, and at that time, the instruments were very different than what you see here. It would be a single row of tongues of wood. The word marimba actually means tongue of wood in an African language, and maybe there were 7 notes and some kind of pentatonic tuning. And so definitely not the chromatic tuning and the resonators that you see. The resonators from those instruments were either a hole in the ground or bored out logs with the gourds, yes, with the bars suspended. About 500 years ago, those instruments made their way to Central America through slave trading. And then about 110 or so, 20 years ago, a couple of distinctive families from Central America, the Bethencourts and the Hurtado family, made their way to actually the Midwest of America, of the US, and brought their instruments with them. And then that's when we see a movement with manufacturing, with the Deegan Company and the Leedy Company to create concert stage instruments. And they were already building bells and glockenspiels for organs and chimes and things like that for churches. So this was kind of a natural fit, was to take on building this kind of a keyboard instrument. So really solidifying the tuning process, and the resonators are very important, which are the pipes under the keys. They're tuned to the same pitch as the bar, and that's how you get that real mellow and robust resonant sound from the wood, is the resonators, the pipes under the bottom. And so from then we've had several kind of waves of activity with marimba, early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s, and then again in the 60s and 70s with some marimba ensembles. And then we're kind of amidst what I like to call a third heyday or wave, and it's been lasting maybe like 30 years of marimba activity, where kids or students are learning the technique and repertoire at a much more advanced level and faster rate than they used to.
And as percussionists, you all can play literally hundreds of instruments, right? And you're trained to do that. But tell us how marimba has come to be the solo instrument of choice for all percussionists. Is it simply because of the chromaticism and the range, or is there some other reason? And Lynn, you had something you wanted to share. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a great story, one of my favorite moments in the history of marimba, and Matthew can talk a little more about this too, but I guess it was in the, I don't remember the decade exactly, but in the 20s or 30s maybe, there would be advertisements in magazines for marimbas, like in Good Housekeeping magazine or in Better Homes and Gardens. You could get, there was an ad, buy your marimba for I don't know how much, and we'll send you, the marimba to your house to go in your living room, and we'll send you some music and all of this. There was this huge salon-style thing, and a lot of women in particular were playing the marimba, just as one might play the piano. And then there's this great story about this huge tour of 100 marimbas that went overseas by boat, every single one in their case, and they went and did a tour. And it's just, to me, to think there was this massive time when it was, you could order it from a magazine, It was just so interesting, because now it's maybe a little bit more niche, but wouldn't it be fun if you could, just order it that way? So I love that story. So I hearken back to that, especially as a woman playing, I think of those times, and I think that they even sent these beautiful dresses and suits for them to play in and everything. And so as a solo instrument, then I think that there are some key people who really helped bring our instrument to the forefront. And I know the ones that had a huge impact on me as a young child playing drums. I really wanted to play drums. But there were a couple people, maybe some of you have heard of Evelyn Glennie, who is a hearing impaired percussionist who just really did incredible things. Keiko Abe is a Japanese woman who really made these huge splashes as soloists. And I think for the generation after them, we just got enthralled with that idea of being on stage playing this instrument, and then things started to go from there. So that had an impact on me for sure.
That's great. Kevin, we've kind of been remiss not to ask you a little bit more. Tell us, as you were in a band, were you the drummer of the band?
Oh, I was a rock and roll marimba player.
Okay.
I think I was the only one in the 1990s who did that. There were some before, and I'm sure there's many afterwards. I used to, in the band I was in, it was a jam band. You know what that is? It's a 90s thing, I guess. I used to play wearing a kilt with no shirt on, with a scarf and a top hat, jumping around. And I have the back surgery to prove it.
But writing this piece, as you said before, you mentioned this yesterday at our education concerts. We performed for about 3,000 kids yesterday too, and I want to thank all of these wonderful musicians for giving so much of their time yesterday to help these kids from Cheyenne. But you mentioned at the concerts that it was really Matthew asking you to write this piece that was the inspiration. But as a marimbist yourself, tell us about your compositional process for this concerto. Did you play through the parts?
Yeah, I had to check every part to make sure everything was doable. I didn't want to hurt anybody's hands. I don't want to hurt my own hands. No, I had to. I don't want to, and the orchestra parts too. I had to make sure that everything is okay and everyone's happy. Even for the orchestration, I wanted to make sure that flute 2 had just as much to do as flute number 1. That kind of thing. Usually flute 2 is really just thrown under the bus or so, right? With all the other instruments as well. So yeah, I tried everything out, and at that point was kind of the end of me really playing marimba, a lot. This was maybe around 2018, somewhere around there. Because the thing is, they were playing a piece of mine that was like 4 minutes long. It was just a marimba quartet, little piece from their early 1990s, and so they played that, and then he contacted me, and then that was around 2018, and so I've been talking to him for so many years, and I met him for the first time in person yesterday. Wow. I saw him once at a concert at Rutgers University. It was a Nancy Zelsman marimba camp of some kind. Were you in the camp or were you a teacher?
I was a guest performer.
Okay. And so I saw him perform there, but he didn't remember me. I was in the audience, So, but there you go. Now, what else do you want to know?
Well, I mean, maybe we could talk about your piece, unless you want to play a solo piece first, or something else.
We can
Thank
end
you.
with that too, if that's
Whatever you'd like. I mean, I know everybody's anxious to hear you guys play. Maybe play a little bit, then we can get into the Romanski.
Let's hear marimba, okay?
Okay, so we typically perform with 4 instruments. So when you come to the concert on Saturday and Sunday, you'll see 4 of these grand keyboards on stage. We have a piece that is part of a commissioning project that we did, in which we commissioned 6 women composers to write for Marimba Quartet. A number of years ago, we identified that there was quite a shortage in the repertoire for Marimba Quartet by women composers. So we set out 2017, 2018, we started on a mission to change this, and New Music USA awarded us a grant, and we did a consortium, which Lynn's school was part of, and so now we have 6 new awesome pieces, plus some extra ones too that are coming our way. But this piece is by Nirmala Rajasekhar. She's an Indian Veena player. She lives in the Twin Cities, splits her time between Chennai and Minneapolis. Chennai, India, and Minneapolis, US. And this piece is based on a children's song that she always sang and heard her mother sing to her. And it's called A Skip, a Hop, and a Jump.
So when you normally perform with 4 instruments, you are divided into sort of like the top voice, next, sort of like soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Is that how you can perform on one instrument? Just kind of crowding each other? Is that why?
Yes.
Or, I mean, obviously, sometimes, even with 4 instruments, you're playing the full range, each of you.
Right. Especially with his piece, we're all over the instruments.
Yes, of course,
all
yeah.
of us. But some pieces, like I usually play the soprano, Ryan plays the alto, Marco's tenor, and Lynn is our bass player. Sometimes the piece really kind of confines you to that actual area of the instrument, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. But the cool thing about the marimba quartet is you do have the option of quadrupling things and tripling and doubling, because we all have the same notes and all on the same range. But for this presentation, we're a little bit flip-flopped around to make this work, because bass player and soprano player are in the middle, and anyhow, it still works. It's a lot of fun. But here we go.
incredible. And some of that might be the acoustics of this
It's a
room.
great room.
It is a great room for it, yeah. You know, Matthew, at one point yesterday, you were showing what it sounds like without the resonator tubes. Would you mind quickly showing us that? This was fascinating. So you know those resonator tubes he was talking about. You know, even though it looks like there's a tube for every thing here, you remember these are like the black keys, on the ones closer to you. So there are gaps here where there's actually nothing really in that tube, right?
Right, this is a cosmetic design to have, you know, all of the spaces filled with tubes, otherwise it kind of looks like it's missing teeth.
Right.
So just as William said, like the piano keyboard, these are the sharps and flats, so the black keys on the piano, and these are like the white keys, the naturals. And every bar has a tuned arc in it, and after the session you could come up and see where the rosewood bar has been cut away to create the pitch that you're hearing. And then also the tube has a cap in it. It's under a bar, and that's how they tune it. There's a certain equation that works all the way down the instrument, so the length of the pipe gets longer and longer, just like an organ pipe, but you can hear it. So this is with resonators. Well, maybe I'll do these two. And then if I just shift them away, when there's no caps, remember that's just the cosmetic tubes. Yeah, you lose a lot of that resonance.
Makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you're hearing more overtone and a lot less fundamental there because the tube, the fascinating thing about it is when we strike the bar actually flexes in the sine wave. So we have somewhere a video on one of our Instagram pages of a bar after it's struck in slow motion, and it looks like it's like flexible and malleable.
Amazing.
And that pushes the air down into the tube, and then it turns around and comes right back out, and that's what we're hearing in the space, the big resonance.
So the sound isn't coming out the bottom of those tubes at all. It's coming back up, right? Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. You know, and hearing you perform that last piece made me think that whether it's classical music that you're playing or anything else, it always sort of has a folk, earthy, kind of woody quality that's just so special. It is unique, that sound. And you were saying earlier that like ragtime has also always had a home on this instrument, because in the heyday of ragtime is that first wave of the 1920s and 30s. That also sounds like, you know, when you hear the marimba, you kind of hear that too.
Yes.
Marco, it looked like you wanted to say something. Was that?
Oh, no, I was just holding the mic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, should we transition
Well,
into?
the early microphones of the 1920s picked up the xylophone really well. And so I think that's probably the main reason why the xylophone was the pop music instrument of the time. That was the electric guitar of the 1920s. Because of the microphones. If you ever listen to a piano recording from 1920, how it's very muddy sounding, like a piano doesn't, the microphones can't pick up a piano, but it can pick up a xylophone.
Right.
Yeah, because they were recording into a horn,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it would send the sound waves into carve the wax.
Exactly.
And the xylophone has like a really quick, sharp.
Yeah, it has a sharp tone. And you notice that every wind instrument, brass instrument, or string instrument can sustain a note, but a marimba cannot sustain a note. We have to imply the sustain. And you want to imply for them?
Sure. The illusion of sustain.
Yeah.
Whole.
So
So we use rhythm. We play rolls. We call it rolls or tremolos.
so that it's a rhythmic instrument, because if you have to roll to have sustain. The last piece that they just played didn't have any sustain notes, didn't have any rolls. It was a rhythmic piece. So the marimba, the xylophone, or have a penchant for rhythm music because of that.
So for those of us out here who don't know, tell us briefly what's the difference between a xylophone and a marimba?
So they're both made with rosewood keys. So the rosewood comes from Central America. It's the only rosewood in hardwood in the world that really works this well for the instruments because of its durability and its dampening, or its resonant properties. It doesn't dampen itself when it's struck. It still vibrates. And so the xylophone has a higher range, smaller bars. It goes an octave higher than the marimba and not as low. The tuning, though, is a little bit different. The xylophone overtones are tuned to the double octave, and then the fifth. And the marimba is the double octave and the major third. And so that's, if you listen to the xylophone next to the marimba, the xylophone almost sounds like hollower, especially in those lower bars if you play a fifth together. And the marimba has this real kind of earthy, like warm, rich quality because you have those thirds ringing. And sometimes it can be a clash because a minor piece has a clashing third there with the overtones.
And before we get more into Kevin's piece, there's another piece that we're going to be performing with the Cheyenne Symphony musician percussionists called A Ceiling Full of Stars, and that lends its title to the title of our concert. This is a really cool piece written by composer Blake Tyson, who's also a percussionist, a professor at Central Arkansas University. And you brought this to my attention knowing that we had this universe theme.
Yes.
And you said, well, there's this really cool piece. And so it involves the four marimbas, but they also get to each play tuned triangles of 4 different tunings of triangles. And then the other musicians from the Cheyenne Symphony are playing 2 vibraphones, crotales, chimes, and glockenspiel. And it creates this incredible shimmery outer space sound. And so that's going to be one of the pieces on the program tomorrow night as well, A Ceiling Full of Stars. So that one really sounds like you're floating in outer space, and it was inspired by the composer remembering when he was a little boy, and they had those like little lights projected on the ceiling in his bedroom, little stars projected from a planetarium, and the wonder of space. So that's that a little bit about that other piece you'll hear. But really kind of the anchor piece of tomorrow's concert is Kevin's wonderful concerto. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about what inspired some of the melodies and other things about this piece. What can they expect?
Let me shuffle through my memories. It was written, I think, it started in 2018 and it finished in 2020, and then we were going to perform it in 2020 in spring, and COVID hit and was postponed until last year, 2023, in March. When I set out to write for this, first I found out how big is the orchestra was the first question. It was supposed to be written for a concert with Dubuque Symphony that had Beethoven's Third Symphony, which means I wasn't allowed to have any trombones or tuba, and they wanted me to do 3 horns, remember that? And I'm like, 3 horns? No one does 3 horns anymore, they do 2 or 4, mostly it was 4, so yeah, there's a little bit of a dodgy thing where I started writing trombones, and he's like, Kevin, take them out. I'm like, oh no. Gotta start over again, erase everything. So how did I get going with this piece? I guess you could say that I wanted to, composers are always trying to do something new, and I was trying to do something new. I bet you don't believe me, but I was trying to do something new. Okay, the form of it was new, okay. And so the thing is that usually a standard symphony or chamber work, whatever, they always have like 3 or 4 movements, mostly 4 movements, and each movement is self-contained. They are different. They don't relate to each other, I wouldn't say. They can. Later on in years, in the romantic period, maybe they might have something where the theme would come back. That's what I was doing. I actually had like the first movement, the second movement, third movement, go back to the first movement again, and then go to a 4th movement. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. Yeah. So on a program page, it doesn't work. Now, at the Dubuque Symphony premiere, the program just said Concerto for Marimba Quartet Orchestra. Done. That was it. So it works. Very contemporary, like usually pieces that we have are just one title. That's it. And then he wanted to actually do the movements. Looks like Dutch gramophone CDs, you know what I mean? And he wrote one out and said, well, do it this way. And then, look, that looks good. Let me try mine. And I tried, no, his looks better. So anyways, the form of it is it would say strange, but I think it's kind of a natural thing. I think it's okay to go back to an earlier movement to give you a refresher or to return to home, So I remember that. So I don't think it's illegal to do. I think it's a natural human thing to do such a thing. It's just doesn't work on a program in the program notes.
And the whole piece is continuous, so
Yeah.
no breaks between the movements or when you go back to the first and second movement.
Yeah, but then everyone will notice, oh yeah, I remember that, that's that opening theme again.
Right.
And then, yeah. Now, let's say, talking about offering something new, and I know that the piece it's tonal, it's diatonic, it's tonal. It has keys, everyone can relate to it, everyone's mind works and can feel the harmonic progressions and the emotional changes that come from these harmonic changes. It's difficult in contemporary music that has a lot of dissonances. It's hard to feel a harmonic change because every harmony is dissonant and you don't know what to feel. And you have this feeling of, I don't know where I am. And you're beating me over the head with a baseball bat. And please stop, that can happen. So in this case, it's very tonal. It should be something everyone can identify with. So what can I offer that's new? One thing that comes to mind was that in the slow movement, there's a time signature. It's 15/8 time, which is 5/4 time. It's a quintuple time signature. Now, quintuple time signatures have been around forever. People don't believe it, but it has been. I did some research on it. It does go back to medieval times. In the Baroque period, Handel had a 5/8 bar and an opera of his. In the classical period, they had 5/4 time. I didn't know this until a couple days ago. Chopin, who shows up at every piano recital, his first piano sonata, the slow movement, the entire thing is in 5/4 time. Could you believe it? That's 1828, right? Right after Beethoven died, 5/4 time, okay? And everyone thinks of 5/4 time as being this contemporary, jazz fusion, chicoria type of thing, So no, Chopin, he did it too. And the thing is, this 5/4 time, it does come from the nationalist movement of the 1800s, where Eastern European countries, Polish, Bulgarian, into Latvia, Georgia, Balkan states, their folk dances use 5/4 time because they believe that these dances, people's balance isn't perfect. People are flawed, okay? They're not on balance, 4/4 time is this perfect balance, And so that comes into the classical music of the time, okay? Now, regarding 15/8 time, which is 1 lali, 2 lali, 3 lali, 4 lali, 5 lali, 1. That time signature, even up till now, has not really been used that much. It was used in a small section of a Brahms trio from 1860. Debussy used it in the Fetis from his orchestra piece in 1890, okay? And then there's a Medner sonata, piano sonata, it's the second sonata, and half of it is that time signature. But that's really it.
That's amazing.
So not many people have offered to this, and it's not like it's something super new. If Brahms did it, but no one really did anything afterwards. I thought maybe I could, make a full movement that uses that, and that would be something new to offer. So I'm fixing a machine from the 1800s, basically, that no one ever decided to fix. So,
Could we play some of that 15/8?
Is there any extra that you have? You don't have the music with you?
We have the music, but it's only the,
Oh,
I
even just one of you just playing the main theme?
Yeah.
And if you don't,
We can
I
try.
can have it.
I
We
volunteer.
can go back and forth.
I volunteer with you.
Yeah.
I could count the time while he does it so you can feel it, okay? Because the thing is, when it comes to 5/4 time or 15/8 time,
Thank you.
the general public, the audience, won't know where beat 1 is. So they don't know where they are. So if I have this diatonic harmonic music that does sound nice, pleasing to the ears, but you don't know where 1 is. It's like, oh, it's beautiful, but I don't know where I am.
Right.
And I thought that was something that was interesting to experience. I'll help you find where 1 is.
Thank you guys so much.
I'll just play it twice or something.
just our little thing.
Yeah, and then Ryan will come in, and then I'll come in.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Two, three, 4, 1, 2, 3. 5-1. That's right. 2. Okay. Can you feel the 1? She felt the 1 over there. She knew where it was.
We're running out of time, my friends, and there's so much to talk about. This has been such a pleasure to get to know each of you individually and as a group, to hear each of you, and Kevin, to hear about your piece. Are there any final words you want to share about your piece?
Well, I'm hoping that you're all coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I hope you can wrap yourself up and take it home with you, okay? Okay? I hope that, it's a lot of modern pieces. You can't leave the hall singing the tune. You can't take it home, right? This happens a lot, right? With some contemporary pieces. I hope that this you can take home with you, okay?
Thank you for that. And thank you to each of you for your presentation today, for being here, for your performances this weekend, your performances yesterday for the kids. You've done a lot here in Cheyenne, and you will do a lot in Laramie later today, of course. And Kevin, the fact that you came all the way from Taiwan means so much to us as well. So thank you all, and thank you for being here. Thanks to the Laramie County Library.
Thank you.